Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to be going over a recent article from Game Informer, and a couple months ago they interviewed Naughty Dog's co-presidents Evan Wells and Neil Druckmann just about the company, how they've dealt with the backlash of part 2, and just potentially what they're going to be working on in the future. But before I get into the article, make sure you share with your friends, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel grow. So there was a recent article published by Game Informer, and they sat down with Evan Wells and Neil Druckmann, and they just asked them a couple questions about just the overall state of Naughty Dog and what they've been working on and how they dealt with The Last of Us Part 2's backlash. And the first thing I want to point out that they talked about, or should I say that they asked Evan Wells and Neil Druckmann, one of the first questions was, some companies seem to be moving away from the big story-driven single-player games. For example, Ubisoft recently announced that it would be developing more long-tail, free-to-play games. Do you feel that story-driven single-player games are still Naughty Dog's future? And Evan Wells responds by saying, absolutely, yeah, and it's sort of in our DNA to tell these stories. I think that's going to continue. Single-player experiences are near and dear to us. It's what has attracted a lot of people to Naughty Dog, and that's what inspires them. So I think we're going to keep at it as long as we can. And Neil Druckmann was also asked the same question, and he said, and again, going back to who Sony is, there has never been a mandate like, oh, this is where we see the wind shifting. Can you start making these kind of games instead? We know, just as they know, that when you work on something you're excited by, something you're passionate by, you're going to do great work. I just want to throw in my own opinion here, and I'm really liking what I'm hearing from Evan and Neil, because obviously everyone knows Naughty Dog by their single player story driven games. That's what Naughty Dog is the best at, and it's nice to see that, they were asked if they're still going to continue focusing on making single player games and not just following the trends and just making like a new Fortnite or whatever. I know they're making a new Last of Us standalone multiplayer game, but it's just nice to know that they're still going to always be focused on and put single player narrative-driven experiences as their top priority. Another question that they asked them was, you basically put a bow on the Uncharted series, but you still have that Last of Us multiplayer project in the works. Do you want to continue to work on the IP you've established, or do you have a desire to create new properties at this point? And Evan responded by saying, I think the easy answer is both. I think there's excitement to develop new IP, but there is still a ton of love for Uncharted and The Last of Us, and I think you will see both kinds of projects from us in the future. Now, for those of you who are on Twitter a lot like I am, this part of the interview is pretty much what everyone's talking about. Evan Wells pretty much confirming that we are going to see at some point in the future another Last of Us game, but also another Uncharted game. Now, me personally, I don't want another Uncharted. I know it would be top notch, but I think the way they ended Nathan Drake's story with Uncharted 4, I just don't see where they could go. I don't want to reboot. I just want them to there's some things that you shouldn't go back and make another one, because I don't think it would ever be as good as Uncharted 4. That's just my opinion. I don't know where they could, obviously they could go with Nathan Drake's daughter or completely new characters, but I don't want to go with that. Obviously it's their choice. If they do choose to do that, I will support them because they're my favorite developer of all time. But also he did mention The Last of Us, so obviously I've always said this, that they're 100% going to make a Last of Us Part 3, but who knows, they might make more Last of Us games. When it comes to that, I don't really want a lot of Last of Us games. To me, The Last of Us is kind of like, let's say when it comes to movies, it's like Lord of the Rings. There was only 3. I know they made like the Hobbit movies, but they only made a trilogy. I feel like Part 3 should be the trilogy and it should conclude it. I don't want a reboot of Last of Us. I don't want new characters. I just want one more game. Continuing with the topic of The Last of Us, Neil was asked another question about it, stating, The Last of Us Part 2 was a big, sprawling project and it was largely well received, but a certain segment was very critical of various aspects of the game. How did you as a studio deal with that? And Neil responded by saying, when we started making The Last of Us Part 2, specifically, we knew we were making something that would be controversial for part of the fan base. That's not the reason to make it. We made it despite that. Our intention is not to upset people or alienate people. Our intention is to tell a story that's meaningful to us, that we think has some value behind it, and is worth spending years of our time making. When we had the leaks before anybody had a chance to play it, that's when we got a ton of negativity and we started questioning, is this game going to be successful at all? We didn't even know how much the leak really hurt us. That was really the low point for me. And it helped that some people in the studio, like Ashley Swadowski, reached out to me and said, I just want you to know that no matter what happens, I am proud of this game. It's my favorite game I've ever worked on, and you don't understand how much this means to me. More than anything, that's the thing that makes me proud. Sometimes I get asked, do you get nervous for interviews or for doing a presentation at E3? And I'm an introvert and there is some level of nervousness, but I never get more nervous than when I have to speak in front of all of Naughty Dog, because there's nobody that Evan and I want to make more proud than everybody else who works on the game. because they put so much of themselves into the game. They're so excited and they're so passionate about what they're making. Those are the people I want to make proud more than anything else. If some percentage of the studio didn't like the game, that would just bum me out beyond repair. As far as people on the outside, I'm like, that's unfortunate, but I stand by the game we made. So yeah, I'm really liking what Neil is saying. Naughty Dog's not backing down. Obviously, a lot of the fan base absolutely doesn't like Part 2 at all. To me, it's my favorite game of all time. I love it so much. I've played through it 8 times now, and it's just nice to know that Naughty Dog isn't backing down and that they're pretty much saying that they're hearing those fans saying that they don't like Part 2 at all, but they're still going to stick with their guns, and they're extremely proud of the game they made. And I'm extremely proud of the game that Naughty Dog did make, because I think it's phenomenal. I'm so glad they didn't just make a cheesy sequel, because they could have easily just made a Part 2 and make it to where Joel and Ellie were going on another adventure, and it probably would have sold even more copies, but it wouldn't have been as good. I tweeted yesterday saying that the story that we got in Part 2 wasn't what we wanted, but it's the story that needed to be told. And I stand by that 100%. And so yeah, it's just nice to read that Naughty Dog is proud of what they make, and that even though if they come up with a story for a game, whether it's a new Uncharted, new Last of Us, or new IP, if they want to tell that story, it doesn't matter what the fans say. I mean, to a degree, yes, but they're not gonna beg for the fans' permission to make a story. If they come up with a story for a game and they're really passionate about it, they're gonna make that story, and I fully support that 100%. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about when it comes to this article in particular. What do you guys think? Have you guys checked out this article? Obviously they talk about more stuff, but I just want to talk about the stuff mainly about Uncharted and The Last of Us and how they dealt with the backlash of The Last of Us Part 2. So just let me know down in the comment section what you guys thought about this article, what you guys thought about Part 2, if you would want them to make a Part 3. How would you feel about them making a new Uncharted? Would you want them to make it like Uncharted 5, or would you want it to be like maybe they just new characters, pretty much like a reboot or a remake of first Uncharted game? Just let me know down in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.